You ready to go, Stephen? All right. Sarah, can you hear us? Okay. All right. I will call the meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. First up is commendations. Does anyone have any commendations? Sarah?
Hi, yes. I wanted to give an accommodation to the band and the strings program that put on their all strings, and I'm assuming it was, I'm going to murder the name, but I believe it was the all band concert last week. The work that those students did was absolutely amazing. I had the privilege of attending the strings concert, and what Julie Frias does with those kids is nothing short of amazing. As I'm sure what Kate in the other band instructors do with the band portion is the same. And I just want to commend all the faculty and staff that put work into getting the students where they needed to be, and all those students that got up there and performed, because it was really amazing.
Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else? All right, I will commend, and I should ask Dan before the meeting for all the names. But Lucy New and is Aiden? Aiden New, and then who is the third young woman? Sophia Vatnick. Sophia Vatnick. That they are headed over to Village tomorrow and on Monday to do some training with the kids on anti-Semitism and being kind, and they sort of created this presentation in light of the swastika incidents that they've had over there and some of the other hateful speech. And they had such a teacher buy-in for it that they then had to add Monday as well in order to get to all the classrooms. So very impressive students. I think there was an article in the Reporter at some point very recently that talked about their response and, just a highlight of the really amazing students that we have in our district. All right, Yasin, I'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's been a busy couple weeks, emotional couple weeks. On March 19th, the high school held a vigil for James Galante. The accident shook the school deeply, and our thoughts are with the Galante family. There's been fundraising for wristbands and sweatshirts as well at the high school, and you can also support his memorial fund on GoFundMe. On March 25th, the Marblehead Racial Justice Team gifted Marblehead Public Schools portraits of Harriet Tubman and John Lewis. We thank them for their generous donation. As Sarah mentioned, on March 29th and March 30th, the all bands and all strings concerts were at MVMS. Great job to the students who performed. MCAS for grade 10 was on March 29th and March 30th. On April 2nd, the Drama Club production of Macbeth made it to regionals in Drama Fest, and many members won individual awards, so congratulations to everyone who performed. Some of those students who are going to give speeches at Village also spoke at a statewide summit about anti-Semitism, Sophia Vatnick and Lucy New. We're proud of their efforts as we look to make our community more accepting. The orchestra won third place at MICA Concert Festival, which is the MA Instrumental and Chorus Conductors Association. Congratulations to them. The musical Bye Bye Birdie will be shown Friday and Saturday at 7 and Sunday at 2 at MVMS, so make sure to get tickets. I also want to give congratulations to Will Lamb. His documentary, The Truth About Coldwater Surfing, was selected as a finalist for the Salem Film Festival, which ran March 24th through April 3rd. The high school also welcomed two new clubs, No Labels, which is an open forum discussion club, and Support and Be Supported, a club that brings awareness to and supports mental health, which, as we all know, is very important. Project 351 is running a clothing drive through April 8th. The National Art Honor Society is holding a fundraising auction through April 8th. Course selection for grades 9 through 11 is running through April 13th. And on April 13th, juniors will also have a seminar with college admissions experts. Yesterday, the seniors got a visit from the Cookie Monster truck. So that was a nice treat for them. And the junior class is currently selling raffle tickets for prom. They are also taking donations until tomorrow, and they are accepting monetary donations through the class account. And the boys and girls won their track meet on April 3rd. Preston.
Fantastic. You're correct. A lot going on. Thanks for all the updates. Yeah, it's great to see it so busy. Yeah, thank you.
And then spring break, spring vacation's coming up, right?
Yes, it is.
1 week away.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, great, awesome. Thank you so much.
Enjoy,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks.
All right, that leads us to public comment. If anyone would like to make public comment, please use the raise hand function and I will call on you. I'll ask that you state your full name and address for the record and that you keep your comments to the 3-minute length and time.
Do you want me to time this?
Sure, you can time. Thank you, Emily. All right, Catherine Martin, I see your hand up first. Go ahead.
Good evening, Catherine Martin, 29 West Shore Drive. First, I'd just like to start off with attending the 4 o'clock meeting where they were talking about some of the capital asks being moved around. My first comment is, I think that should have been a joint meeting with our facilities committee. We actually have a facilities committee who's worked really hard on those asks, and the way the town kind of willy-nilly was just referencing them. It was disheartening. I mean, we all know that non-bondable items were paid for with free cash over the years. So like that, you know, Jackie Belf-Becker sitting there saying, oh, we can't put these in because they don't have a 10-year life. There's always been a mechanism for the town to help us with funding, for them to come back at the 11th hour and try to segment these asks into boxes, asks that they've known about for months, that have been codified by a study, was just disingenuous. And I really hope that you're able to put that money in your general override ask, because it didn't sit well with me. Once again, it just feels like a lack of transparency, and that's not what you need. You know, I've tried hard to think about what I want to talk about tonight. For, I don't know, 5 or 6, 7 years, I get up at almost every meeting and talk about how we need an override, how we need a plan, how we need more money. And I had someone say to me tonight that this override is holding our parents hostage. And I was like, that is exactly how I feel, because I know we need this money. I know that there are deficiencies in multiple areas, but I haven't seen the transparency and the work that makes me want to put on the pom-poms and get out and sell this. I'm really upset with our school committee that they did not hold our superintendent's feet to the fire with a 5-year strategic plan that had action items, that had budget drivers that we could point to. I'm equally upset that there are people in this community who want a line item budget and they're being told that they need to go up to Widger Road and look at a book, when after 2 years of a pandemic, everything we've done has been electronic. And we actually now have a very sophisticated tech person program who would be able to post this. And I get that things are changing and there might be a lag for a day or two, but it could be there. I'm also upset that 48 hours in advance of meetings, things are not there. You need people to turn out for this vote. These things do not just get handed to us in this town, as is evidenced by the 4 o'clock meeting. You know, there was a lot of wordplay there, but at the end of the day, they were trying to strip you of things you need, safety items, technology items, and even something simple like a playground. So, you know, that's like the preamble to a lot of my frustration, but my biggest frustration has to be as a special education parent. And I'll speak for every parent who's had to sit through an IEP meeting and told, I'm sorry, we don't offer that. I'm sorry, we don't have enough trained staff. I'm sorry that person went out on maternity leave and now we cannot give you the services you need. I'm sorry, I know we told you that your child needed Orton Gillingham, but next year's teacher is not Orton Gillingham certified. They're Wilson certified, and that's really what you need. And then the next year when you go, oh, wait a minute, nope, they're LIPS certified. It seems like your child would fit better in this class. It seems like this substantially separate class is a better fit. I'm sorry, we just don't have room in that class this year. For every special education parent who have been waiting for this override, who have been waiting for peer inclusion, who have been waiting for the co-taught model, this is a gut blow. This is a gut blow to me. I ran for school committee 2 times. The only reason I ran was for special education. It was for funding our kids. It was for curriculum. It was for student achievement. And we're on the precipice of being able to get some of the money we need, but you need to do the work. And I'm feeling held hostage. So at the end of the day, yeah, I'll probably raise my hand at town meeting. But I gotta tell please don't unmute me. I'm speaking during public comment.
Excuse me. You have 3 minutes per our policy. You hit your 3 minutes. We asked you to wrap it up a couple of times. So thank you, Ms. Martin. Jonathan Letterman.
Sorry, I'm just turning my camera on. So I also tried to get into the 4 o'clock meeting today. I had trouble for the first few minutes. And as you all know, I stated that I would be recording that minute. I didn't need your permission. I just had to give you notice that I'd be recording that meeting. I was told that I hadn't given notice. Well, I have a recording of me not being able to get into the meeting, which I'd be glad to share with all of you. I think that's an open meeting violation. You have to have those meetings open. I don't understand why the person who's running the meeting needs to give permission to each person to come in. It should be automatic. You walk into the room and it should be open. Now, that being said, you continue to embargo your work documents that you have for tonight's meeting. So the public can't possibly review anything in advance. I don't understand why you're doing that. What are you hiding? Just make them public like every other committee used to do a week in advance and let people see the stuff. Regarding the line item budget that Katie mentioned, again, the budget you released was a supplemental budget. You still have not posted anywhere a line item budget, except apparently in a binder or a book in Widger Road. Now, I know all of you have a copy of that book, and apparently, even though Michelle Crest's assistant was not aware of it when I came in last Wednesday to look for it, that document has yet to be made available publicly, certainly not online. So again, I'd ask the question, why don't you post those line item budget publicly? You keep discussing all sorts of addendums to your budget, but the baseline budget has never been posted. I guess the last thing I would say is because you haven't posted a line item budget, I think that your hearing on the budget was unlawful. Chapter 71, section 38 says you have to post your budget for the public so they can see it. And that didn't happen. And when I came in person to look for it, it was not available. And several people told me that. It wasn't just one person. And I can give you the times and the people and all those things offline. So my question for you, and I know you don't necessarily have to respond to this, but will you be posting a line item budget? Or does the public have to come in person to review a binder or a book, as you refer to it, in person in order to be able to see a line item budget? And if you do make it available in person, do they have the ability to copy it, or do they have to read it while they're there and maybe take camera phone pictures? I just want to understand, why won't you release that budget? You're asking for a lot of money from the public. It seems to me that the least you could do is tell people what you're spending your money on. We always used to do that when I was on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Nicole Cohen.
Hi, my question, I am backing up what Jonathan Letterman said in regards to the budget. You claim to be doing transparency, but yet you're not offering the most, as you were saying, the basic transparency. These things are not open. These meetings are held in very awkward times when people cannot participate. They're not widely known in some of these meetings. In regards to some of the positions, like the DEI position, when you claim that stakeholders are requesting this, I don't know that that is true. You had the 5-year plan that was held not during times when people could attend. And then you did not offer the community, specifically people who have students, but the community at large, you didn't send out a survey, something as simple as SurveyMonkey, to address the concerns and the needs of students. You had a meeting specifically held during times. And then I'm also going to go off a little bit on topic here and say I'm a little concerned with, I don't know how to say this. Sometimes some of the members on the committee do not seem to be holding themselves in a professional manner. Catherine Martin, you dismissed her in a very condescending way. Watching a committee meeting with a member attacking other committee meeting members, I'm a little concerned about the professionalism on the committee in regards their numerous open law meetings, questions, transparency with the budget questions, and just the lack of being kind to all the members. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. I have a single name, McCullough.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to echo what Jonathan Letterman was saying.
Can you state your full name and address for the record?
Karen Talmockliff, 11 Traeger Road. I just wanted to echo what Jonathan Letterman was saying about the need for a line item budget to be available to the public. You know, coming out of the 2-year pandemic, it should be posted online. A lot of people are still, nervous and don't like to go in person. And there's, certainly no reason why this can't be uploaded online. I'm also very concerned about how this this addendum or this supplemental budget is not comprehensive, and that we have these outdated textbooks that could be at risk of not getting approved should it come to the vote. And it would really be nice to know that these textbooks are not at risk of not getting approved. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Karen. Becca Wyden.
Yeah, Becca Whidden, 150 Atlantic Avenue. I wanted to echo what you've already heard, but I think it's important you hear it from as many people as are able to speak out on it. Many families in our community, mine is certainly one of them, have 2 working parents who work during traditional business hours. I know many of you on the committee also work during business hours, and that in fact superintendent and members of the select board and finance committee and so on also work. But I think that the kind of scheduling of meetings, say 4 p.m. on a work day, that's a tricky one. I don't think that it certainly doesn't feel collaborative with the people who are going to be trying to vote for your override, who want to vote for your override, but also want to have the information before they cast their vote. So that's a point of frustration. And then this is actually a question and I don't know the answer, but I don't know if you can answer it. The documents at Widger Road, again, just the question of sort of accessibility for people who work. If you work in Boston, is the idea that Widger Road documents are available at the weekend or in evening hours? My hunch is the answer is no. And then that begs the question, in order to have access to the information that they need, do working parents in our community need to take a day off to be able to go to Widger Road to see this binder? Or is there not some other way that we can provide that level of transparency that you seem to advocate, but don't necessarily seem to be producing at the moment? And it sounds like we've got a good tech person, so maybe we could look into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca. All right, I will move us, I don't have any other hands raised. I will move us into the FY23 budget vote. I'm going to ask that we move the facilities capital request update from the bottom of our agenda under subcommittee and liaison updates up to here, because I know that some of the developments that have happened are possibly going to impact the bottom line of the budget. So I guess I know facilities, you guys met the other day. Do you want to sort of kick it off? I believe this was discussed at the budget subcommittee meeting earlier today. I will just make, I like to try to address pieces as we can. We can't post a dual budget subcommittee and finance committee. That's a full school committee meeting at that point. So that's why that would not have happened. So facilities, do you want to weigh in?
Sure, I'm happy to start speaking to this, but I definitely welcome Emily to jump in at any point if I'm missing anything or she has something to add. We met last week and we talked about the items, how they're going to be included or not included at present from what the town can do. We had come up with what our capital request would be. We've all seen the list. It was roofs, there were some safety items, there was tech items, but it was really driven by our facilities assessment that we had done about 18 months ago and that we used as our structure to develop our facilities long-term strategic plan. So we included anything in our ask that the consultants listed as critical. Now, this was critical 18 months ago. And so they felt it needed to be done then. Obviously, due to funding mechanisms, this was as soon as we can address this, and fair enough. So we put all those on, and then any items that were brought to our attention that impacted safety. Because at no point did our committee feel that we were going to put off anything safety till next year. So the town this year, what they're doing, I know our members of our committee know this, but just for anybody that doesn't understand, they're hosting is not the word. They have two capital articles that are earlier in the warrant. And one will be for roofs, the high school roof, the D-wing roof of the vet school, is the roof at the police station, and there may be another town side roof, but that will essentially be the roofs article. In that, I believe our rooftop units for HVAC over the gym area of the high school. Then they are also put on a warrant article for technology. And that is to address the tech needs of the town. And we were invited to put the tech needs of the school that were in our original request for the capital override into that as well. So those items had a home. At the end of the day, there were items that did not have a home. When our committee met, what we decided, and I want to make a note that this was voted and it was unanimous by all members of our committee. That was, Emily and I, Michelle and Todd, Dr. Bucky, and Jeff St. George, who is a professional in this field, in this day job. So we all voted unanimously that we were not prepared to not bring forward any of these items, that they all were critical and or identified as safety elements. And we wanted to do that. We've been hearing from the town that they want us to keep up with our assets and our buildings and take care of things. So we need to start doing that. And that costs money. So at that point, we decided as a committee, there was two mechanisms to fund this that were left to us. We have a placeholder for a capital request override, and we have the placeholder for the general operating budget override. It was decided at that point, and again voted unanimously, that it is the recommendation of the facilities committee to include all these asks in the operating budget. And I just want to give the reasoning why. One of the reasons why is, the more we break it up, the less likely we are to get what we really do need. And I don't use the word need lightly. People are going to be voting on 2 articles very early in the warrant, 10, 11, or 11, 12 for those tech and roof overrides. Then we're really at the end, 47, 48. By the time we get through all those things, I do think the more we segment we really start to cherry picking what the schools need. And I will argue we desperately need these critical elements. So that was one strategic reason to put it in the into the operating budget. But the main reason, to be perfectly honest, is when you familiarize yourself with our 10-year outlook on that facilities master plan, you'll notice that every year there are big ticket items that need to be taken care of. So although I know the argument was made that these are one-time expenses, so they should not be in here, the actual description may be a one-time expense, but when you look at the aggregate average, our consultants are recommending that we make that investment every single year in our capital ask. What has been customary is around the 200, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more number. And that's really how we've gotten to the place we've gotten in our facilities. We have the data, we have the facilities assessment, we have the strategic facilities plan 10 years out. We can look every year what we need. And we know that although these items we're fixing this year, we need this year, next year, we need a very large number as well. So by structuring that in our operating budget, we know that every year we're able to keep up with the maintenance as we move through, and that we are prepared. And it's not, that we get 2, 3, 4 years down the line and we say, oh, wait, we haven't been keeping up. So now all these needs are critical, but we can only do so many. We talk about how we address our user fees on an annual basis. This would be in the same way. We invested in this plan. We have this plan. We know what we need every year. These are the items we need next year. We need this money still to carry forward in our operating budget. We need different items next year. And I can tell you what they are because we'll pull them up. So that's what would be the argument to put them in the operating budget, because we need to be allocating this money every single year. And this number would help us get to that number that our audit told us. It doesn't get us all the way there, but it will help.
All right.
Emily, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree. Also, I'm looking at the assessment now, and some of the critical items were meant to be done this year. So we are actually a year behind, which I think is good for everyone to hear, or you could go look at this. So we're still playing catch up with putting all these things in. And we have some big items coming up, water heaters and more roof maintenance. Like, it's just, we gotta just keep taking care of our buildings, and it's gonna cost a lot of money because we want them to keep working for years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, just when you got this feedback from the town, I'm just curious, when you got it, the conversations that you all had with the town on perhaps why they didn't include these or why they did, and some other alternatives. So can you talk through some of the conversations you've had with the town about these?
John brought us the list.
Yeah, Michelle was the one coordinating those conversations with the town side.
Yeah, I can jump in here. It was last week when we found out what was in and what was out, and it was literally just a notification. It was not a discussion. But I did follow up with the interim town administrator, and understood that the reason these were not included because they are running out of free cash quickly, and all of the items that were approved to be on a capital article are considered a debt exclusion. So it needs to have a useful life of 10 years. These items do not necessarily have a documentable useful life of 10 years. Plus, these are a lot of these are maintenance and repair. Maintenance and repair are not bondable by for the minimum of 10 years or more. So therefore, it did not fit nicely within the confines of the 2 debt exclusion articles the town is presenting. So these articles essentially were kind of left out in the cold. And that's why they've come to our attention. Do we add them to operating? do we add them to a capital exclusion article, which is also another vehicle to bring these to the voters? It essentially is a one-time override. It would add these funds to the tax base just for that 1 year. It's a one-time cost, and then it comes off the tax rolls for the next year. So that is our other option if we wish to pursue all of these items.
Okay, so one thing that we've talked about for a while now too, and we've got an MOU with the town, is to talk through some of these, like building maintenance, because it's not just a school department issue, right? Facility maintenance is a townwide issue. We put an MOU together so that we could talk through how to structure the funding for that in a sustainable way, in addition to the properties that we have. So can someone update me on what those conversations have been with the town? Because that, like operating budget, I can understand having a more robust line item. But I think kind of, like I said, we've talked about this for a long time, the long-term approach to fund our facilities maintenance. Like that's why we put that MOU together. So if we could just talk through those conversations as well, that would be helpful, just so we have the background.
So the MOU, as it reads, is for the properties, I believe, but I have reached out to the town. I had sent an email to all the select board members asking them to identify who their representatives are. I know Emily and I are our representatives. I do not know who their representatives are. So I had sent an email asking them to identify who their representatives are. And then just stating that we wanted to set up meetings with those representatives. I think they have to still decide in their meeting who their representatives are. My understanding in discussion with a couple of their board members is that they don't even know who their representatives are. So they have to assign those people. And then once they do, we can meet.
So I appreciate the justification that you provided, Michelle. I'm still confused by it, and not with you. So on here, the police station has improvements to the locker room, flooring, and new lockers. But refinishing the gym floor at the vets, and although I think the playground upgrades don't fit. On here, the flashing of a second-story window and painting the building, and in another building, the exterior trim, sills, and gutters are on here as being funded through this, but our facade pieces at Village are not. So I'm a little fuzzy still as to how and why our asks don't fit within there when those asks do. Like, I understand what you're telling us and it makes sense until you look at what they're funding and then putting in there, and then what didn't get put in from our requests. And I'm aggravated that we just got this information back from the town to begin with, when it's been out there for a really long time, because now we're here today after our hearing and trying to fix a number that again keeps changing, even though I don't believe it's through any fault of our own. Some of the pieces that we're playing with, I'll take responsibility with. I won't take responsibility as the committee. I won't take responsibility for these capital pieces, because we've been told all along that the town is addressing the capital requests this year in capital overrides, but then we get half of our things pushed back to us at the 11th hour. So it's just really frustrating for me to be sitting in this chair trying to figure out what we need to include, what can be put off to next year, but put off to next year doesn't make much sense if we're addressing the capital issues this year as a full town. And then, I took a lot of pushback about having the one-time asks in our budget and then not coming back for additional asks, but now we're basically being asked to put more one-time asks into our budget, which again, Sarah, I actually think your thinking around this is, it makes a lot of sense to me about being able to have that in our operating budget so that we can fund our own facilities maintenance moving forward, or fund it a little bit better. You know, it's the first time I'm hearing it, so I often need a little bit more time to sort of really process through things, but it's definitely well taken, and an interesting concept. But frustrating nonetheless that I just, I feel like we've tried to be upfront about all of this all along, and then it's sort of like just lobbed in at us at the last minute. Maybe I'm being overdramatic, but I try not to do that, so.
No, I do want to just provide a little bit of clarification. And looking at the town articles, the items that you did just refer to, such as the police station locker room, those are actually proposed to come from tax levy, which is either tax levy or free cash, or both similar articles that don't need debt exclusion. So those are coming from tax levy. Of our capital articles that the town has moved forward, our capital requests, $175,000 to replace the fire alarm panel at the high school is coming from tax levy. So that fits about the approximate $200,000 that they usually will approve to us without going for a debt authorization. So I think they were trying to fit within those confines of what is available under the tax levy and within the free cash, and what is not. So
I guess then it just kind of comes down to like, are we going for a capital? Like, are we fixing capital this year as a town, or are we only fixing some capital this year as a town? Because this to me says we're only fixing some capital as a town this year.
I do know that there are significant town requests also not being funded this year that have been brought forward to them. So it's not just the school department. It's a larger issue.
So I guess, I continue to understand Sarah's thinking around this. I don't know that it's in our best interest to not fund these.
And again, I agree with your frustration, Sarah. I don't know if we're going to get answers through that right now. So I think that if we just, I don't know what the best mechanism is. I'm happy to make a motion to follow the unanimous recommendation of the facilities committee to include these costs into our operating budget. I don't know if there's a second for that.
Second. Does anybody have anything else to say?
These costs, though, we haven't identified, we haven't seen the slide yet. Wasn't there a presentation of the costs that are left over? Are we going to talk specifically about what the motion is including?
So the motion.
That was in our, yeah.
I understand it.
Right.
It's these two slides that were pulled from last week's and just kind of captured from last week's presentation. And that would be to the tune, if we are, as Sarah's motion states, it's all of them for $426,407.
That's correct.
So the motion as it stands would add $426,407 to whatever bottom line we.
John and Michelle, now that we've kind of had a few more conversations about that, is that your recommendation as well, or do you have a different recommendation?
That would be my recommendation, with continued conversation with town to address some of the questions that have been raised this evening. I would put the money forward this evening and then raise the question about facade and raise the question about the gym floor at Betts. And if that changes the number, but I would rather have all of it included at this point than not to include something and then find out that town is not able to cover.
So I understand it's, this is, with these different articles and the different way things are funded, it can be overwhelming, and this is a big year, and I just wanted to offer up of just another little bit of detail. Just want to get back to it, but where I can see it. But the overall, bear with me, the overall ask, and I didn't have it. Open it, bear with me. The overall ask this year as a town going into town meeting will be $24,364,000 and $298. So there's $396,000 in equipment leases. There's $216,000 in equipment purchases. There's $427,000 in public expenses. Total of $1 million through taxation, as Michelle was commenting. And then you get into debt exclusion overrides, a summary of roof replacements and major roof renovations of 8.9 million, roads and sidewalk reconstruction, 12.4 million, public buildings, 1.1 million. And we have our piece of technology, and the town has technology for a total of 1.7 million, for a total of 24,364,000. So I think there's clearly a town need here. The school ask of this 24 million is about 8 million out of the 24 million. And I appreciate the work that Sarah and Emily have done to get this, and the committee, along with Michelle and others, Todd and everybody who's done the work and the due diligence to get these numbers out in front of the town. And, you know, I too wish maybe they had come a little bit sooner, but I do have some empathy given the situation that the town was going through with the town administrator leaving and a few other things. And so I think we're all efforting, you know, forward here to move things in the right direction, both from a capital on the town side. And I would encourage people to come to town meeting and hear about this. It's important, you know, and hear about the high school roof and hear about the repairs that are needed at schools that were built over 20 years ago, and they need to be maintained. And we do need to make an investment. Hear about the technology request that we have from our new IT director, where we have technology that is operating on Windows 7 and is outdated and no longer supported. Hear about the technology needs that we didn't have when we ran into a pandemic, but I don't think there was an expectation that any district would need the level of technology we ran into for remote learning. But aside from that, we certainly had a lot of limitations, but I think this will really get the district from a technology standpoint to where we need to be. When it comes down to these last items for the capital requests that are on there, right, the useful life aside, I think it would be helpful to have this within our budget, because then there is, you know, I'll say it, there's transparency, because people will be able to go back and see that we allocated $426,000 to do certain things to our facilities, and they should expect that we use some of that money and set it aside next year and be the first ones to call us out if for some reason we're not spending that money on facilities or things that are needed in our schools. So I think it's a step in the right direction, both from the articles that'll be represented in 9, 10, and 11 at town meeting, and by us taking this vote tonight to put in things like repairing our gym floors and entry doors at the Marblehead High School and various other things that are needed and long overdue. So.
All right. Anybody else? We have a motion that's been seconded. I will roll call. Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
Megan Taylor,
Yes.
Emily Barron. Yes. All right, that passes 5-0. So then,
And just to affirm, so that was the 426,407?
Yes.
What we just voted?
yes. to move that into the total operational number. All right, so that moves us then straight into the FY '23 budget vote. We've had a number of conversations about this. I thought we had a great hearing a week ago with some really good feedback. We've received multiple emails over the past week as well, and we really appreciate everybody weighing in. It's always helpful. So I think some of the pieces that had been discussed, we got an updated tracking sheet this afternoon with some of those numbers in there. So I will kind of open it up.
I'd like to start the conversation by making a motion. Sorry.
Okay.
So I'm going to motion to approve the fiscal year 23 operating budget that the superintendent has put forward in an amount of $46,606,959 with the addition of the 426,407 that we just talked about in capital improvements. So that brings us to a total budget of $47,033,366.
Could you just say that one more time?
Got it right here.
Oh, you got it. Thank you.
Anyone can freeze.
Yep. So we've got a motion.
I would
Second.
like to, okay, I would like to amend the motion to take, I was hoping we would have a discussion that was reflective of what we heard in our meeting the other night before we brought a number forward. So
Let me just pause for a moment so that we all are on the same page for what is in the 47,33,366. Michelle, can you walk us through that?
Sure. How detailed do you want to get? But basically, this is the entire superintendent's recommendation. The number that we were looking at just last week was $46,606,959. We have made one small change to that since last week, but it was a net zero effect. Our security camera quote actually came in about 95,000 less than we had anticipated. So we are proposing to add the 95,000 to high school curriculum positions at this time. In addition, if we add all the articles, that's a total of $426,407, bringing the total to $47,033,366. And this actually includes all of the requests that Dr. Bucky has outlined in various presentations in each of the categories. And this does include every single request, except for a couple that we've talked throughout the process that the principals have brought forward to us. So this is an all-inclusive budget at this time. And I do think that there's not much that we're missing from this budget. We certainly do not want to add additional funds that we are not able to use this current year, because it's not a great idea to request funds that we are not able to operationalize at this point. And we did have extensive conversations with the principals, even as most recent as a couple of days ago, asking them if this budget does not include anything that they need for next year, and it does not. We even brought up some curriculum questions, and because certain curriculum frameworks don't exist, or things that the state has not come forward and come out with directives on, we are not prepared to implement. So the principals did reiterate, every single one of them, in a meeting with Dr. Buckney and myself, that this budget encompasses all of their needs for next year.
Okay.
And I just want to add, I mean, to reemphasize, because I think we've only had one meeting where this was specifically discussed, but the out-of-district special education is fully funded in this ask as well, that will
Yes.
come from taxation before what will be part of the override. So
Correct. At the finance committee meeting, they voted to recommend a budget with our base budget roll forward our contractual obligations plus our special education out of district increase of 814,000. That would be part of their operating budget without any override.
Sarah?
So what, I have concerns. We heard widespread that people wanted the curriculum positions as was presented in December. I know they're in here, it says curriculum positions for 95,000, which is the exact amount of savings from the security camera line item. But what was proposed in December and was proposed very eloquently by Dan Bauer was 208,000, I think 312. And so what I would like to do is augment the proposed budget and add at least 113,000 to reflect the original cost as presented by Dan Bauer for his curriculum coaches. He made a wonderful case for that in December. We heard unanimous or from lots of people that this is what they want. I heard it from a ton of people when I did the Planning for Success, road show, as I call it, where I went to people's houses to small groups. And in that request was 208,000, not in some change, not 95. So I would like to add that additional 113,000 to reflect what Dan Bauer requested.
So Dr. Bucky, can you speak to that? Because there's been a lot of conversation that's kind of gone on, especially within the past few weeks regarding changes. And I know Emily was talking with Dan for a while about sort of ways in which it might make sense to use some of our current staff and augment their positions. So I'll be quiet and let you speak.
Sure. The curriculum coordinators, as presented, we've gone back and forth, and Dan has been doing research. He's been working with Nan and me. What we talked about at the public budget hearing, thank you, was a proposal of existing staff and maybe part-time teaching, part-time curriculum work. That was looking at like a budget figure of 56, 58,000. And so this week, when we got the security cameras, the estimate, we were able to augment that, and Dan is able to speak to that tonight from his original request to this and how it will support the work of high school. So if you, with the chair's permission, I'll have Dan speak to it himself.
Always welcome to hear Dan.
Oh, good. All right, you can see me.
Welcome, Dan. Hi, Dan.
Welcome. How are you? Welcome.
Good.
Yes. Do I have to do anything? There's another thing. All right, thank you. I'm actually thrilled that we're able to do this year, because the anticipation was it wasn't going to happen. It would happen next year. I have done a lot of research, because at the end of the day, we need to find a model that will work. We know that we're facing declining enrollment. We're still in the throes of sectioning and making that work, and knowing that, yes, I want the curriculum directors, and knowing that I can have them this year. I'm thrilled, because I don't have to wait. And I'm able to make that work through some section piece and taking this money and being able to apply it to make the two positions work. So I'm definitely thrilled. I know that the initial proposal back in December really didn't take into account a lot of the idea of utilizing teaching in the sections and knowing that through. So I'm quite thrilled with this. And I also want to say too, that I know that this is the beginning, because, there's certainly more needs that we have, but I'm happy to take this as the seed to make this work. And I'm, again, excited for this.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
You welcome.
Any questions for Dan?
I appreciate the support too. And really, it's been loud and clear, and our staff hears that. We appreciate this.
Sarah, I can't see. Oh, now I can see you. Okay. Did you have any questions for Dan?
No, thank you, Dan. Very much. Your ability to be a team player and, make things work never ceases to amaze me. However, I would still like to amend the motion for an increase of 113,000 to reflect the positions as first presented in December. I don't know if there's a second.
Is there a second for that? I don't think there's a second, Sarah.
I think for me, can I just add a piece here, is that we have talked about, this budget now since December. We've been at it a long time. And one thing that I really appreciate from the administration is that they have been so thoughtful and so comprehensive as they continue to look at this from their original presentation, but it has been very consistent. And I am not, like I said in many meetings before, I'm not the educational expert. That's why we have John and Michelle and Dan and the other principals and administrators. And we handpicked all of these people to come in and help us lead this district. And I think they all do a phenomenal job. I'm not here to second guess them. I am here to support them and advocate for what they say they need. And so that is why I've made the motion that I have, because I support them and I will advocate for them to get what they think this district needs to be, as John says, an exemplary district.
I'd like to add on to that. I think, unlike any time before, I think I have well, I shouldn't say any time before, but, being able to present this budget, I have the full faith and confidence. I second that with the administrators and the staff that we have at the schools and the work that they've done with Dr. Bucky to bring these requests forward and to outline them and provide clarity. And for people who think there isn't clarity and they don't know about the budget, we will certainly be able to provide a summary detail of everything that's been asked for since December, everything that's been talked about in liaison meetings that have been available on Zoom, that have been posted well in advance, that have been public meetings. I'm happy to speak to any group that wants to hear what this ask is that we're bringing forward. And I also think that we couldn't have done it without the good work of Michelle Cresta to be able to align our budgets and make sure that every school had the proper funding. I mean, how many times did we hear that we had to freeze the budget in the middle of the year, or, there were no longer going to be POs? And we've now been able to align those budgets. So we understand what needs there are. For the most part, there's still going to be some trade-offs at the end of the year, some unexpected expenses and various things. And at the same time, the schools have turned back money to the town, in 2 successive years. We've turned money back to the town through good fiscal management. We've also been able to prepay some of our out-of-district special education tuition to try and manage those costs that have been going up at a rapid pace. And we've also not had to go into the reserve fund of $250,000 for the last 2 years. So that's another $500,000 that we have turned back to the town in free cash. So I feel real comfortable asking for this. I think our district and our students and parents and the town deserves to have the quality of schools that we have, and to continue to provide an exemplary education. And I'm confident that we'll be able to do this. Lastly, there's been questions. I mean, we were asked, is this good enough? Is this going to get us through the next 3, 4, 5 years? I won't speak for the chair, but I know you had comments that we can't answer that question. But this is the budget that's come forward that can get us to where we want to be for the expenses that we've identified and the needs that we currently have. And should something come up, it will be up to the committee and the staff that whatever year that might be to identify what those needs are and continue to bring those things forward. But I think also, Dan mentioned a declining enrollment. And so with declining enrollment, we took some opportunities through retirements to, you get some opportunities there potentially for savings. And so we'll see where that leads us. in those areas. And so I'm in full support of the budget that we're here to vote tonight. I'm in full support, obviously, of the capital request that we added into this budget. And I thank everybody for the hard work that's gone into this budget today, and look forward to town meeting and the vote that comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also like to support the budget that we're bringing forward, and I want to thank the administration for listening to me and answering every one of my phone calls when I've had multiple questions about every single piece of this budget with all of our community concerns. I would call them, I've talked to everyone multiple times a day with all these different things that have come up and saying, well, what about this? What about this? And letting me go and speak to Dan, even though that was, I know I overstepped, but thank you for letting me get that clarification and being able to make that work. So I do feel good about this budget and these numbers because I've asked a lot of questions and they were answered. And I feel like, again, these are the people who know what they're doing. And I feel like we have to trust that they are doing the right thing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with those sentiments. I also thank everybody. This has obviously been a very long process. And I know we've asked a lot of our administrators kind of over and over and explaining things and going back to the drawing board and digging in a little bit deeper and making sure that things are covered. And I think that leads us to a really solid budget for next year. As David mentioned, I've been pushed a couple of times from both sides as to whether or not, we'd be going back in next year. When I'm not going to commit to when we're going to go back in, other than to say when there's a need, we will, and that we can explain, we will present it and ask. That's been my consistent refrain for a long time now. And I think we have shown over the past few years, as we've sort of rebuilt everything and gotten administrators in and really have a solid staff, that there's a deep understanding of all of these lines, that there's nothing hidden anywhere, and that when we can turn money back, we turn money back. And so, I expect all of the ways in which we've come to operate over the past couple of years to continue forward, and into whatever next year may bring. And, similarly to the facilities audit documents that Sarah referred to earlier, we don't have that broad sweeping that doesn't exist for, the needs of a district, because that's far too individualized, and changes. But I do think, none of this is static. It just isn't. And so as we move through the years, we will continue to identify things. The state will continue to identify things that we'll need to put forward. And we'll continue to make this district better and better and better for the kids and the families that live in Marblehead. And, I'm proud of this process this year. And, my only wish would that we would have voted this a couple months ago, but here we are tonight, and I'm happy that we're again moving forward and voting this and can get out and start really kind of explaining it to people over and over and over, so that everybody kind of has that really deep understanding that we've built within the past few months of working with you guys as the elected officials to really understand all of these pieces as they've been put forward, so that we can advocate correctly.
So can I just clarify one thing there too? Is you mentioned the facilities audit, and that is a great roadmap for us, but we also have the planning for success, which really, that whole process is what this budget is built upon, right? So I know everyone wants a strategic plan, but that is what the planning for success is, that 5-year roadmap with specific priorities mapped out, that we got an enormous amount of community feedback. That's how we came up with them. And it was, that committee was comprised of stakeholders across the board. That is our strategic plan. That is what we are moving forward for the next 5 years, the planning for success. That was the start of this budget process. We got that done, like we said we were going to, and then we built the budget to meet the needs of that planning for success. So, that is our roadmap, and that is what we're funding here.
And I think, as I talked with John earlier this week, I found myself, and I've spoken with a couple of community members as well, that kind of, as I was spinning stuff around in my head, it occurred to me that, and I asked John for this, and it's, for more like town meeting, but, in my work on the SAC, we talk a lot about a portrait of a graduate, and that's something that as the high school is moving forward and reaccredited and everything, that portrait of a graduate really has to be looked at and refined at each time. And so we talked, there was an SAC meeting today, so we talked a little bit about that and the process that some of the educators in the high school have gone through with some PD around really building it so that it actually starts with our youngest learners, and so they sort of grasp this as they get older and older through our system. And so sort of a portrait of the district in the next 5 years, I think, is a really interesting concept of kind of how that can be laid out and what that looks like. Because I think, we have it on paper, it's explained in a lot of detail. And, I definitely appreciate things visually and when it's kind of mapped out for me in different ways and can sort of get lost in words. So I think, John was happy to do that as we had that conversation. So I think that would be something to look forward to, sort of quite literally paint a picture as to kind of where we see the district in the coming years. And what was put forward, as Megan said, with the plan for success work. Sarah?
Hi, if everybody can just bear with me while I read what may be a long-winded statement. I just thought it was best for me to collect my thoughts in regards to where we stand with this number. We've heard a lot from the community. I've brought forth my concerns many times, but this is to kind of summarize what I'm feeling and what I hear. And I'll kind of go area by area. So as far as the DEI coordinator goes, I want to be very clear that this is an item I see the validity of this position that ensures all students are valued and treated fairly, that all students have equity and all students have inclusion. I've long said that accessibility is not inclusion. But as I dig deeper, I am concerned that I have not seen a clear description of the scope of this position, what its objectives are, and how completion of the goals will be evaluated in order to maximize outcomes. I worry that this position, without these clear objectives, will just check a box and give a possibly false narrative that the work that needs to be done is in fact being done. We've seen 5 METCO directors in 4 years. This very school committee voted against school choice last year, 4-1, something that could provide an avenue of diversity to diversify our enrollment beyond what is often a homogeneous ethnic, socioeconomic, and cultural representation that we do currently find in Marblehead. We need to be digging into what is the root of the problem that keeps causing all these very hateful acts that we see in our schools. And we need to be a place that not only accepts but celebrates each other's differences. But I am not convinced that this one position is the most impactful way to do so. As far as special education goes, it is our single biggest source of volatility in our budget and has been for many years. In fact, I believe this year we had a bigger delta in our out-of-district placements than ever seen prior in a single year. I'm deeply troubled that we are not seeing a single extra dollar in this budget for special education, nor is there any mention of addressing special education programs in the 5-year outlook. For over a decade, I personally have heard talk of how we need a co-taught model. Every time it's brought up, it is said that we will need an override to accomplish this, which will truly provide inclusion for all students with individualized needs, yet this is not currently reflected. We have no formal social studies curriculum K through 6 currently. At present, our teachers develop and write their own curriculum to make sure our kids are taught to have taught to the state mandated standards. I know one response I've heard is teachers are overtaxed with initiatives, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. However, I'd argue our staff wants this and will be thankful to no longer write and sometimes fund their own social studies curriculum. We also have no allocation for the new social emotional curriculum, despite the startling results of the CPAC survey that show anxiety to be the biggest concern of respondents by a wide margin. We are coming off a pandemic that we know has affected our children in drastic ways as far as their social emotional development and health are concerned, and we need an aligned curriculum to address this. The current budget left our district telling a valued consultant in mindfulness that there's no room in the budget next year. However, staff found the work being done by the consultant impactful, and the consultant was encouraged to turn to the PTOs to fund the $20,000 position. $20,000. Curriculum directors for the high school were requested by Dan Bauer for $208,000. Public came out in force and said they wanted these restored. And we've been hearing this for 14 years. They've been added, but at a rate of 95. I would like to have seen that delta included. The idea that we would pick curriculum prior, I would argue that we should be looking at curriculum coordinators for all grades, not just the high school. The idea that we would pick curriculum prior to onboarding these professionals will continue, or who will coordinate the professional development, implementation, and evaluation of the curriculum seems counterintuitive. Not to mention busing and sustainability, which we heard over and over through planning for success, are important. Someone told me this past week that during the Brown School project, they supported the project, even though it wasn't the school they wanted, because it was the school they were offered and they knew what their kids needed. I'd argue that while Brown School wasn't exactly what everyone wanted, it was what we needed. And I stand by the fact that it was what we needed. I worry this budget is not meeting the needs of all of our students yet. I know we need more money, and I know emphatically our schools are underfunded. I will support this budget because it provides additional funding we desperately need. I know the negative impact level funding will have on our schools, and it is not a blow to students that they should have to or even could sustain. However, I think there's more work to be done. I know we can do the work. We have a good team. I know our staff and students deserve to have their needs met. Our kids need this money. So I hope and I will work to gain support for this, but I also will not stop advocating for the needs that this budget I feel is not yet meeting.
Megan?
Can we address some of these? Because I feel like some of these have come up a few times. And I do feel like there's some, maybe, I don't know if it's misunderstanding or I don't know what, but like specifically on the special ed piece, like, is there some clarification that you can provide for that? Also on the social studies curriculum, because there's a lot of information around, there has been a lot of discussion around the social studies curriculum. And what I hear from, whether it's my SAC meetings or from the administration, doesn't support asking for it in this budget, but has money set aside to fund it when we are ready for it. So can we just kind of talk about, or John, Michelle, and anyone else who's here, talk through some of those pieces to add some clarity, so maybe we can just close these ones off. Is that all right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to speak. Sarah had raised these points with me, and so I brought the leadership team back together on Wednesday and addressed them point by point. The social studies curriculum, the state is piloting a 4 to 7 curriculum this year as they're settling the frameworks. We have applied to be a pilot district in year 2 of this. The principal said there isn't a good product out there. There isn't a good curriculum. And so I trust them that the professional K-8 educators are saying there is not a product out there. And as the state has not settled the frameworks, purchasing a social studies curriculum, adding another initiative to staff is not something that they would support right now.
And just to follow on from that in terms of funding when and if, well, not if, but when we get to the point where you're ready for it, can you talk about how this budget sets us up for that, please?
Well, we have the one-time ask in the budget. And so if next year or FY25, the state is vetted the piloted curriculum and feels that, and our leaders feel that it is a quality product, then we could look at an adoption at that time.
Thank you.
And I have asked Dr. Donnelly to be here tonight to talk about the special education piece because I feel that many of the asks in this budget address the MTSS work that we're doing to be a more inclusive school, to provide our teachers with the supplies, the resources, the materials, the assets, so that students can have differentiated curricula. And this year, like no other, I shared an article today about the number of dysregulated students and students struggling with social emotional, that our increase in out-of-district tuitions has nothing to do with students that are going to perhaps a language-based placement, but students for whom the public schools are not able to meet their needs. And so I would just ask if, with the permission of the chair, for Dr. Donnelly to come up and address. I know she's had a number of conversations this week as questions for special education, but I would say that it is deeply included in the request for this budget.
Welcome, Paula.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to address some of the questions that have come up. Should I? So first and foremost, I want to be really clear that a special education student is a general education student first. So any ask from the Office of Teaching and Learning and from the building principals will support students that have disabilities. So it's, I understand that special education student services is a separate line item department from all of these other things. But when I think about what kids need quality tier 1 and tier 2 instruction first. So when you look at some of the data for the district, our identified population of kids with disabilities is significantly higher than comparable communities. It's significantly higher than neighboring communities. And while I don't have, the longitudinal experience here that many do, I think a lot of that can really be directly attributed to the gulf between tier 1 instruction and tier 3 supports. So when I look at what my colleagues have supported, that's all going to benefit special education students. So when there are questions around equity for kids with disabilities, equity for students that are English language learners, that's really a big part of where that comes from. One thing that doesn't get mentioned in the budget conversations is that special education gets a significant amount of federal funding. So our IDEA grant for this year was $706,312. There's an additional $19,770 in the 262 grant, which is for preschool age children, so ages 3 to 5. In addition to that, we had $144,082 in ARPA funding and $12,819 in ARPA funding that can be used for ages 3 to 5 as well. So that's a significant amount of money that does not get accounted for in a lot of these discussions because it's an entitlement. So those funds are right now designated for contracted services, professional development, and instructional materials. And I also want to speak to some of, the question of, so I know that the question around the mindfulness consultant has come up. That was taken out of the IDEA budget. When a special education grant is used for a contracted provider, there are real strict limitations on what that can be utilized for. So if the community request is around mindfulness for all, it really can't be done through special education funding. It's just not allowed, and I think the community is well aware of when funds are not utilized in an appropriate manner, what that means. And with respect to some of the questions around inclusion and an inclusive model and an inclusive mindset, there's a lot of things that go into that. one of the biggest things that I have found so far this year, and again, it's been a limited amount of time in a highly unusual year, is that the way that the master schedule for the building works is really what a proponent or an impediment to a truly co-taught model can be. So as you know, Principal Bauer can attest to, there's a great co-taught model here at the high school, because when students are scheduled, special education gets scheduled first. And that really permits a lot of flexibility within the schedule and allows for a lot of really great co-teaching to happen. So it's more than 20 classes here at the high school. When I look at the K-6 buildings, those schedules are not built with special education needs in mind first. And that presents a significant challenge to trying to schedule providers efficiently and effectively. So for example, if we have students that could be grouped together for an Orton Gillingham based language instruction, if they don't have common schedules, they can't be done together. And that makes things feel like we're short-staffed and that we need more people. And we don't need more people. We need schedules that are really aligned and designed for there to be efficient instruction and collaboration across all of the different grades and disciplines within the buildings. And I can't speak to where the design for those schedules came, but I know that there are some things that become the scheduling priority, and it isn't necessarily special education. And with respect to the long-term goals for the department, I know that last June, Dr. Oxford laid out the mapping the road ahead, outlining the strategic vision for the student services department. In those priority areas, we're kind of redefining what student services is all about. It's not just special education. It includes ELs, it includes 504s. Any student that might be deemed educationally at risk all falls under this umbrella. We've talked about the cultural responsive competencies. Obviously, we know that DEI is a big part of the work that we're doing. And I also think that if we are taking SEL and DEI and just compartmentalizing them into these sections of the day, we're not doing it right. And we need to be thinking about what those things mean across every single thing that we do in the building, across the day and across our instruction, and across every interaction that we have with each other and with students. Another strategic focus is maximizing inclusive opportunities. I know that there has been a lot of conversation out there that we got rid of programs. We didn't get rid of programs. We got rid of identifying kids by the name of the classroom that they were in. And that's really important when we talk about inclusion and when we talk about kids being authentically and meaningfully included in their school community. And finally, the last area of focus was aligning our practices across our department. So all special education staff has been working this year with a consultant to try to align our approach to writing IEPs so that there is a identifiable Marblehead IEP and not a Glover IEP that needs to be rewritten for Village, that needs to be revised for vets, and on and on and on. I think that that's where it can often feel to parents disjointed and concerning and anxiety provoking. And what we're working really hard to ensure is that kids are well supported, not just in practice, but in all of the documentation that follows them as well. So I think that covered a lot of the questions or concerns. I'm certainly open to any further questions from folks in the community. I'm happy to meet with people at any point if they have specific concerns. But I know that the areas that have been brought up in different meetings, different hearings, I understand historically those have been a concern. I think the one that jumped out at me is when someone goes on leave, they're not replaced. And I know historically that is what happened here, that we would just expect somebody else to pick up somebody else's caseload or to pick up their job. And every time we've had someone go on leave this year, we've posted for a long-term sub we've done everything that we can to try to fill those roles so that kids are never going without. So again, I'm open to conversations with anyone that has questions. Again, I think, a lot of us don't have the historic lens of things that have happened previously in the community. So we are definitely trying to, continue to work to rebuild the trust, and I'm certainly open to continuing to do that.
Thank you, Paul. Can I just say something here? Yeah. Thank you, Paula, for that very detailed walkthrough of all those points. But this is exactly why I will not second guess what this administration has put forward. It is, I think, every time we had someone come up like Paula or Dan, Nan, from the hearing and talk about why they've made the decisions they have, why they've made the recommendations they have, it is clearly thoughtful, comprehensive, and considered all aspects. So I just cannot second guess our administration. I can't. That was such a well-articulated response to all the points that we're hearing. And it's clearly been, like I said, a very considerate and thoughtful approach to coming up to the budget that we have before us to support the needs of our district. So thank you, Paula.
Any questions from Paula?
Through the chair, I just want to make one clarification before anything is misconstrued. Nan did extensive work on elementary schedules that was very inclusive of stakeholders, that was led with a special education lens, and that work was changed. And the schedule that she proposed and that was worked on by stakeholder groups was changed. So that is wherein there is more work to be done, whether it is the extension of the school day, which has been discussed, or looking at that. But the schedules as built, K-3, had special education input into them. And then we know that they were changed. And so those impediments remain.
Megan, thank you, Paula.
Yeah, thank you, Paula.
Did you have other things that you wanted Dr. Bucky to go over?
I think the special ed was a really important one to talk about, and the social studies, just because it's come up so many times. So, those were the ones that really stuck out to me, because we did get, quite a bit of feedback, and the curriculum directors, or curriculum resources positions that we've already talked about with Dan. So, I think those are the ones we've heard a lot of feedback on. So I'm okay unless Dr. Bucky has something else he wants to add, or someone else has other questions.
I think my only final comments would be, I don't want to ever look at the budget as binary choices. It's either this or that. I like to look at it as both and how can we make steady progress in moving from good to great, using a Jim Collins reference. But this budget, supported by the leadership team, and I appreciate the comments of the amount of work that went into it, really is a needs-based budget that has had wide stakeholder input. And so I am always impressed when members of the leadership team have the opportunity to make the case for the funding that they're requesting, or to clarify misconceptions that may be out there, so that everybody can be on board to support the first override in 17 years. And we need to collectively, full-throatedly support the budget as put forward by the professionals, the administrative team, that is needs-based.
And Michelle?
I add just one more thing, and this is less for the school committee and actually more for the public. Just because of the amount of comments that came through public comment today. I do want to respond and state that the line item budget document does exist. It's on our website. It is actually called the FY23 budget summary. It's not traditional in terms of the salary side of the budget. So there is a document on the website, which is on our homepage. There is a button to FY23 documents, budget documents. That is the FY22 roll forward, which is the current line item detail of all of our salary lines. And then the first portion of the budget summary document details the changes from FY22 to FY23 request. And then that totals it The total salary request for FY '23 is $39,065,718. The reason we haven't detailed all those lines yet is because we do not know of certain staffing transfers, certain individual contracts have not yet been settled. So those numbers will fluctuate slightly, and we do not post those specific line items until we know where the placements are for the fall. But the total salary line is the $39,065,718. The second part of that document is every single expense line item, the FY '22 budget, the FY '23 request and change. So this document does exist. So I think there is some misinformation out there. I just wanted to clarify. In addition, the document that is at Wedger Road, which is this huge binder that we all got, it really is just backup. It has these documents that are on the website, but it also includes just backup for every single departmental and school request. It doesn't necessarily include any other detailed line item budget document that isn't already available to the public on the website. Next year, the IT director and I have talked about doing this entire budget binder electronically. And if that does happen, we can certainly post that on the website. But right now, it's roughly 300 to 400 pages. So it's not something that's easily posted to the website. Future years, that's our hope. So I just wanted to put that out there and clarify that we do have a line item budget. So I didn't want that misinformation going around. Certainly anyone is more than welcome to come in and visit me at any time. One of the commenters was not, when he came into the office, I was not there that particular morning. I would have gladly met with him and provided him any of the documents, but that opportunity did not exist that particular morning. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Michelle. Paula, I see that you would like to say one more thing.
I know that the question around out-of-district placements came up. I had just a few minutes to look really quickly. Right now, we do have 50 students out. What I could get my hands on readily was started with FY '19. There were 52 students placed out of district at around 3.8 million. FY '20 was 58 students for 4.2 million plus. FY '21, we were back down almost around $900,000 less than FY '20. And right now we're at 50 students. I think we were at 49 last year. So there have been changes. They're not quite as precipitous and they're not at an all-time high, but we do obviously have a mental health crisis that predated the pandemic. So that's not abating anytime soon. But I know that question has come up. I wanted to make sure I got that in.
Thanks. I appreciate that. All right. Anybody else have anything else that they would like to comment on? We've got a motion, it's been seconded. So otherwise I'll take a vote. All right. Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
Megan Taylor, and Emily Barron. Yes. All right. That motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone. Very much so, including all of our administrators. All right. I think that might be the longest we've taken to get to our consent action items, but I will move us through to that. We had 2 sets of minutes in our packet, so I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes from February 3rd, 2022 and February 17th, 2022. So Megan moved.
Second.
David second. Is there any additions or clarifications on any of those? All right, I will call for a roll call vote. Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox.
Yes.
David Harris.
Yes.
Megan Taylor. Yes. And Emily Barron. Yes. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Lisa, for those. We just lost Crystal Bauer. He was going to talk about the approval of the overnight and out-of-state DECA trip. Dr. Bucky, do you have any information? I know there's a little bit that we had going around in an email, just kind of planning this out.
Yep, they've submitted the necessary forms to central office, but by policy, IJOA, school committee approves any field trips that are out of state or overnight.
And so,
this,
go ahead.
it's both.
Yep, and we had approved this because it was a regional or a national one that they did, and then they've done so well.
They're
So we'll-
continuing to do well.
Yep, so a group of them, and I think technically this is the international competition for DECA.
Wow.
But I believe it's being held stateside. Do you know where it's being held?
I don't.
All right. I'll have to ask Mr. Bauer. Oh, he's headed back in. We caught you.
Through the chair, I have to issue that apology because I waived him to go home for the evening because I know what a long day it has been
It's
for
been a
him.
long day, yes.
Nice
We
try, Dan.
apologize, Dan.
Nice try.
So
Early.
So Dr. Bucky explained a little bit. If you want to, give us any information about the DECA competition and where they're headed and the great work that they've done, feel free to fill us in. We always love hearing.
Sure, I'm more than happy to, and representing Janice Scalban, our advisor, who's done an outstanding job with the support of many to get the program up and going. So this year, we have 6 students who qualified for the international, and that will take place in Atlanta, Georgia, actually through midway during April vacation through the latter part of that. We will only have 4 that will actually be able to participate out of the 6. So that's high for us. That's a great job. So Ms. Scalban has arranged all the hotel, the accommodations, van for transportation to and from. Looks like they're going to have a tailgate dinner and dance at the College Football Hall of Fame, which is great. DECA Day at Six Flags over Georgia. Now, I really want to go with them. DECA Night at Pemberton Place, World of Coca-Cola and the Georgia Aquarium. So they're going to have a great time, well-deserved. The 4 students that are going, Brendan Baker, Madeline Cole, Isabel Harvey, and Benjamin Kahn. So they all well-deserved that are going. Again, we had 6 that qualified. And there's over 10,000 DECA members that will be at this huge convention. So is that all the information you need?
I think that is. Thank you very much.
April 23rd to April 26th.
All right.
Congratulations to those students.
Mhm. Yeah, and thank you to the advisor who obviously works so hard with them.
Absolutely.
Can I get a motion to approve the overnight trip for DECA International? So Megan moved. Second. Emily second. Any quick questions for Dan? All right. Sarah, did you have one? Or are you good? Okay. All right. Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
Megan Taylor,
Yes.
and Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right. That passes 5-0. Thank you very
Great.
much, Dan.
Thank you again for all of your support. We appreciate it.
Always. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Stephen, that will bring us to you we'll move into the superintendent's report. And first up, we have technology update on our educational technology from Director Stephen Swiatek. He's been manning our camera all evening, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Share the screen. So I wanted to kind of go over our technology updates we've been doing since I first arrived. We have replaced and upgraded our firewall. We've added email gateway defense, which scans all of our emails before they received by our servers. We've added new Web Enterprise endpoint protection for scanning anything that's on our desktops. The fiber infrastructure across the district needed to be upgraded. We've replaced all the fiber between all the buildings. At the high school, we've upgraded the fiber internally because when the building was built 20 years ago, it wasn't up to today's standards. So all the fiber between every closet in the high school back to the MPF has been upgraded as well. We've upgraded all the switching across every school in the district, every closet, every port. We have a redundant 10 gig connection between every building and every closet. So we have a big pipe for all the information to travel. We've upgraded the wireless this summer. Every school has an access point in every single classroom. which kind of gets us back to that 3-to-1 we were talking about before, where you're going to have students who have an iPad, a laptop, a phone, and want to be using those devices. And so now we truly do have close to the 3-to-1 in every single room in the district. So we've upgraded every server in each of the schools. So each school's building server has been upgraded. Here at the high school, we restored the original server room that was in the building, put in a new air conditioner for it. We have it says backup battery, but it's the size of, almost a mini. Like it's a large battery, and it allows us to keep everything up and running if we ever do lose power. The plan going forward is that we actually get that hooked up onto our backup generator so that if we ever do lose power, the generator will kick in, but we'll have sustainability even if the generator was to have an issue. So that's a big deal. We've upgraded the server farm here at the high school as well. We have a new VMware virtual server farm, and we're already upgrading and migrating any of the older existing servers onto that system so that there's more redundancy built into that as well. Devices, we had gotten the ECF grant, as you all know about. We received the 600 Chromebooks and 300 iPads. We've distributed, I want to say, close to 90% of the Chromebooks at least. Majority of them have kind of filled in at the village school. So Lover was 1-to-1, Brown's 1-to-1. Village right now is very close to 1-to-1. And before the end of the school year, I feel like we'll be 1-to-1 there as well. The iPads are in. We've been working on unboxing them. Again, these are a lot of devices, and we're putting a lot of extra man hours in to be able to unbox all the stuff and inventory it and prepare it for the students. But we're getting through all of it. So the carousel digital signage was a part of the Brown School project that I was planning to expand across our district. What it does is it allows us to put up displays of pictures and events and kind of spotlight what's going on in the school. So that's already active at the Brown School. PTO from Village was interested, and they purchased a new TV actually three new TVs for the Village School. We already have the first one up and running in the foyer of the school, so it's really nice. They're updating it daily, so it's good to see that going. We are planning to update the high school monitors here. There's one in the cafeteria, one in the hallway, kind of heading towards the cafeteria. So we're working towards getting those upgraded as well, and we'll be moving it over to Glover and the vets as well. Our district phone system. So when I arrived, every school had a different phone system. None of them, you couldn't call one building from the other building and maybe get a busy dial tone if they're on the phone line. So we upgraded every phone system across the district. So right now, any school can call with a 5-digit extension. You don't have to call outside the school to get to anybody else, room to room. And kind of one of the important issues is kind of goes back to this Raybaum's Law Act, where if you're in the building somewhere, students in the building, and they dial 911, our old systems didn't have the capability to tell 911 where in the building they're calling from. This new system does allow us to do that, and we're going to be finishing our migration onto our new phone carrier, which will have us being able to have that capability in every single room of the district. So that's going to be happening during April break. Our planning for success strategic initiatives. I've been working on developing a long-term technology plan. We've been collecting data from all of the schools, looking at all the existing devices. This is kind of where we've found the smart panels that we need to replace. This is where we've looked at all the desktops that we need to upgrade or replace, or luckily enough for us with COVID, every teacher pretty much got a new laptop. And so it's time for us to help them migrate their information onto those new laptops and make that more or less their main device for teaching. So that's all coming down the road as we move forward. We've been gathering information on all the different curriculum and technology that is being taught currently in the district. So kind of every school is its own island. So we're trying to gather what is being taught right now and see what we need to move forward with. And I'm working with Nan on that as well. I'm looking to start up a Marblehead Public Schools Technology Committee, where we'll meet hopefully once a month or once every 6 weeks to look at what we're currently doing, any needs that we have. I'd like to have at least a couple students on the committee as well to get their take as far as what they see that they'd like to have in their classrooms and in each of the schools. I've been working since day one really on getting a multi-year budget in place, and it's taken me probably the first 6 months to go through what we had purchased before I was here. And then it's taken the last year that I've been here to really go and see what we've been purchasing, what we need to renew, what we need to replace. So we've been working on that, and as part of that, we've worked towards building a plan so that we can sustain all the technology that we've been receiving. So the COVID devices, all the teachers' laptops, the Brown School, all the new devices from that project, that ECF grant that we got 900 new devices for. So 5 years from now, we're going to have to replace all these devices, and we need to have a plan in place so that we're ready. It's not going to be a big surprise. So that's the last slide.
That's it?
That's it. That's all you've done.
You don't have anything else?
We did put a new website in, notification system, and there's probably a few other things.
Yeah.
But these things are the ones that, really have made a big difference in teaching day-to-day, Zooming for many of the buildings, so.
Are you sure there's not 2 or 3 of you?
I know.
Somewhere? I knew you did a lot, but I don't know if, I'm assuming everyone can appreciate the amount of work that goes into each one of those items. So it's really impressive the amount of work, the amount of positive impact you've had on our district in a relatively short period of time you've been here. So I'm really glad we got this update, because I think it's worthwhile for the community to realize all the technology upgrades that have been going on as well.
I mean, it's amazing. The fact that you've come in and to say you hit the ground running doesn't even, it's like fastest man alive. It's amazing. And I'm so appreciative. And I think, laying all of this out sets up all of the technology pieces that we've asked for within this budget too, of, it's very clear that you have a plan, that you are chipping away at that plan, and that what you've asked for, you can implement and move forward through our district, from the installation all the way down to the teachers who are going to be using it. I'm amazed.
I have a really good tech staff as well. They work very hard. They are sometimes the first in the building, and a lot of the times the last in the building. So they deserve a lot of credit.
I do like the multi-year plans, both from a technology plan, but also from a budget plan, because we know what those needs are. Then we can think creatively on how we fund, because it doesn't always have to be just like a one-time ask. So I think that's really good that we're kind of doing that forward thinking and planning now, so we can make sure that we're ready to implement it in a way that's effective and everyone hates this term, fiscally responsible.
Yeah, and I think even though you used the word, 5 years from now, right, Steve, you would want to stagger some of that as, technology just keeps getting better
I
and
use the
better,
5
right?
years in a loose term, because Chromebooks are not made to last as long as a laptop. iPads last longer than Chromebooks. So it would be a staggered plan. But it's definitely something that, I've had conversations with Michelle about already. I know we have a good handle on all the devices that we received from ECF, from COVID money, from the building project, which, I know one of our big issues with the Glover School was that after the devices were, 5, 6, 7 years old, we hadn't replaced them yet. And so we finally were able to replace all those and kind of get those up to a standard that was where they need to be.
Great. Yeah, it's really promising. And, it makes me think about when we were doing all the work to sell the new school, the Brown School, it was a lot of a 21st century school for 21st century learning. And this really feels like, our buildings are they're in good shape at this point. And now it's sort of these pieces, particularly with technology, that really are being brought up to speed and fully integrated through our schools. So that, the fact that like a 1-to-1 in so many of the schools is amazing. It took a long time to get the high school there. So
once we get really our curriculum with what we're teaching across the district, and focus more in the probably younger grades that don't have a set curriculum with the STEAM that we're going to be looking to add with our integration specialists being able to work hand in hand with the staff and co-teach with them and really use the technology as needed. So
fantastic.
Thanks for the update.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
All right, John, that leads us to district updates. Take it away.
Yeah, I will be brief. We have, I figured people would appreciate that. The Glover School named Hope Duran as their principal. She'll be in district next Thursday for a coffee here, not here, but at the Glover School at 8:45. I'm going to move that just so that it doesn't interfere with traffic and drop off. The Brown School has identified 3 finalists in their search. They will be in district on Tuesday afternoon, following a very similar format that the Glover search took, in that there will be half an hour with a community forum, parents and interested community members, then to a staff meeting, then to a building tour, and a writing assessment that we will ask them to do. And so resumes for each of the 3 candidates will be available on Tuesday. And for people that can attend, we will post those online. I know Michelle is launching the food service director search and is putting that committee together. We are working, I know Mr. Bauer has received a lot of interest in the assistant principal position at the high school. And so that's exciting for him in that search. And we are working with Metco Inc. In developing the job description and the posting for the Metco director. In the interim, Julia Ferreira is being a point person for the Metco program. We have a facilitator, coordinator at the elementary level, Julia as the point person for the district at the middle school, and then a facilitator, coordinator at the high school. And they have been doing regular Zoom meetings with parents to make sure that nothing is being missed with our Boston students during the transition. But we are working closely with Metco Inc. On the position and the posting and making sure that we're casting a wide net, much beyond school spring, and using their resources as well. So I would just give a shout out to Millie, who has been invaluable in partnering with us in this work. And I don't know if there was another update that Megan wanted me to.
No, I don't have another update. I just have a question. So
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Nope, I think I'm done with updates.
Me, John, me. Just on the Brown principal search, what times are those
That's a great question. They start at 3. And so there will be the first candidate 3 to 3:30, second candidate 3:35, 4:05, and then 4:10.
Awesome. Great. Any other questions for John? Exciting stuff. Yeah, great. Thank you, John.
Yep.
All right, that moves us to finance. Michelle, I will turn it over to you for a bus pilot program update.
Yes.
Can I just preface one thing really quickly too? And you, I think this was in your memo a little bit, but I'll put it out there too. We originally hoped that this would be a larger sort of the bus audit update. We don't have that information still, unfortunately. So I'll let you kind of fill in those.
Yep, absolutely. And I was just going to give a verbal update, but realized that it's probably best to put it in writing as well, so you guys can reference it. So the memo was put in your Dropbox late today. So I apologize for that. But as you mentioned, we are running a very small pilot program this year with our pay to ride program is what we call it. We opened 8 seats in late August. We offered these on a first come, first served basis. It filled up within a matter of, I want to say 10 minutes. We have a waiting list of over 30 kids, which just shows you what the demand is out there. Certainly there is the need. So it has been quite successful for these 8 children, at least. We were able to transport them to and from school, which they would not otherwise be eligible because they live within a 2-mile radius of school. Currently, our overall transportation, we run 2 full buses. One covers Route 1 and 2 in the morning, and the other one covers Route 3 in the morning, but then in the afternoon, they swap off. So basically, both of the buses are at full capacity. One is at 70 taking seats, and the other one is at 72, which is maximum capacity. So I'm glad we did not extend this program any further than we did because we would be in trouble. And as some of the parents may have realized, when we do have a bus driver out right now, we are up against a challenge and possibly having to double up the routes. The kids come home much later. It has been a challenge when one of our bus drivers either has a vacation, not a vacation, they got a personal day, a sick day, or unexpected absence. So it has been a challenge. Right now, our current budget does have a full-time bus driver vacancy. We also have a part-time bus driver vacancy. In addition, the FY23 budget does include one additional full-time bus driver. So if we are able to successfully fill either one of the full-time positions, and we're able to keep them for a matter of a month or so, when we know they're working out, I would recommend that we extend this program for next year, possibly almost up to an entire bus load. Obviously, the bus routes would be combined depending on the geographic area of the students. But I think we could easily open this up to 50, 60 kids. Not a problem. And I think that would be a great thing. It still would be limited to the K through 6 grades at this point. Part of that's due to a variety of reasons. Part of it is the scheduling of the schools. They all pretty much start at the same time. We're not currently having drop-offs or pickups at the middle school, high school, so we would not be able to put that into our current transportation plan. With that, I also do want to mention, this was initially supposed to be an update of the audit, as Sarah did mention. This past fall, we became members of the Massachusetts Association of Pupil Transportation, or MAPT. It is a wonderful group. It offers a variety of supports, information, efficiencies, all kinds of things. And one of their benefits is this free audit. So basically, for the whopping cost of $225 a year, we are members of this great organization, but we also got this audit for free, which is wonderful. So 2 of their representatives, the director and one of their members, who's also an assistant superintendent in the other part of the state, came out on February 9th. They met with myself, all the principals, the directors, Dr. Bucky, Todd Bloodgood, and we spent an entire day going through reviewing our maps, our routes, our staffing, our costs, all sorts of things. And it did not just include regular transportation, it included regular day transportation, special ed transportation, athletic transportation, and any of our overtime as well. So it was a very thorough review. They are still asking for little bits and pieces of information as they're finalizing their report, and we should have that shortly after April vacation. So I did want to give you that, but we did have some feedback just that day as well. They met with us at length at the end of the day. They realized that, you know, part of our roadblock is the driver shortage. And part of it honestly is our salaries. So that's something that we probably need to address sooner than later, before even our contract comes up for renewal. Because that is definitely one of our challenges in filling these positions. But I look forward to that report, and I think it will be nothing but beneficial for us. And I do think as soon as we are able to attract a driver, we can expand this program, which would be a great benefit to a number of families. And that'll be a great thing. Any questions?
Thank you for the update. I'm anxiously awaiting the results of this audit. So when we get that, it'd be great to have you back. I would really like to see us expand this program. I think, you know, we took the initiative to do the pilot, and I think we've done the best we can with it given the shortage. But I really want to see us expand this, and I think it's good for a whole host of reasons, for our students, for the environment, for traffic. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons. So I would like us to really, you know, do what we can for that. And I am not being glib or sarcastic in any way when I say this, but I will go and get my license, my driver's license, if I have to. No one probably wants their kid on the bus and driving, but like if that is what it takes, I will do it. So like, I just want to see this move forward.
Yes, and the audit did have some recommendations of other groups we could reach out to. We have reached out to some of them even before the final results have come out. So we're hopeful. We will revisit the job postings, which have been posted endlessly since I joined Marblehead Schools 2 years ago. We just need to fill these positions.
Over the summer, I need like driver experience with that. Like I've looked into what it takes. 6 months for me to it's like getting my permit all over again 4 years later. So so if that's what I take, and we've got someone who can provide that, then I'm happy to do that.
Great. That's great.
I know John's going to do it with me soon. He's
I
very
will,
fine with it.
I will if you will.
I mean, I've been saying this for a while, so now, you know, put our money where our mouth is, like, or walk the walk, talk the talk, whatever that saying is. Like, let's just make this happen.
Absolutely. And I do just want to add that we have 4 full school buses. One should be a backup, but we have 3 full school buses that we could be running on a regular basis every day. So literally, we have an extra bus parked at the high school every day that we're not using. So if we can just get a driver for that bus, we have the means to widen this program and benefit a lot from us.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Any questions from Michelle at all? Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we had schedules in our Dropbox. I will ask for a motion to approve the identified scheduled bills totaling $1,034,225.91. Megan moved.
Second.
Emily second. Any questions on any of those? All right, Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox?
Yes.
David Harris?
Yes.
Megan Taylor? Yes. And Emily Barron?
Yes.
Right, those passed 5-0. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle.
All right, so that moves us into school committee discussion items. First up, we've got the Medco discussion. We had talked about, I think it was our last regular meeting, the parent, we've talked about it a couple of times, of the parent representative. So that is on here. And then we have also, John had suggested that we hold a meeting, one of our regularly scheduled school committee meetings at Medco Inc. So I'd like to discuss that and pick a date for that we can do that. So we'll start with the parent representative though. I will kick that maybe to you, Emily.
Sure. Well, I saw it in one of Millie's updates that another district has been doing it or was about to do it and was creating a policy on how to go about it. So I think we should do the same thing. I think we have to think of how we're going to do it and implement it, but it would be a non-voting member, someone from Boston, a family, a guardian, someone who has children.
Okay. And I think that sounds like a great idea. And I wonder if we're able to schedule this meeting at Metco Inc., if it might make sense.
Well, that's what I was thinking. We could figure out who might be interested,
Mhm.
and then talk about it there.
Right, right. And maybe we could touch base or, get in contact with the other district that has this. And get a little bit of info on how
Yeah.
they're doing it and what their process has been.
I think this is a great idea. I do think if we're gonna go down there and meet with them, we should kind of bring our recommendation and get their feedback on it before we, make anything official, because they might, have some thoughts on it that we haven't considered yet, just. So I think it's worthwhile getting that perspective. But, if they're interested in one, then I 100% think it's a great idea.
And since we are hybrid, they can just zoom in.
Mhm.
I mean, if they want to come, they can, but if it's.
Has anybody reached out to Robin Michaud to see the logistics of hosting a meeting at Matco Inc.?
Right, no, I have not reached out to Robin. John Winfield did this recently. John, do you have any details to fill in at this point? I know we've talked about should the committee decide that we'd obviously reach out to Winfield and Metco Inc. To really iron out all the details.
Yeah, we have the North Shore Superintendent's Roundtable on Friday, so I can talk to Kristen Vogel at that meeting to find out the procedural things that they had to go through. And if I need to reach out to town regarding this or have you, I'm happy to do it. I think it's an important idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
And many districts have been doing this over the course of the year because Metco has just, they have a new headquarters. So
They do.
part of the meeting is to tour the new headquarters and then Millie would give her presentation on Metco 2.0, which is how it's their next step in Metco and what they're bringing for the future. So that would also be part of the meeting.
And pre-meeting, I believe we'd have like a little parent forum and, or a dinner where.
Yeah,
we
so
can
John
meet
and
some
I talked
parents.
about it and we thought it would be fun if we took the Metco bus into Boston as a
Yeah.
school committee to kind of get an idea of what these kids do every day, twice a day. And then have it drop us off at the headquarters and have parents come and be able to talk to us and then meet them and us. In the tour and the meeting.
My assumption would be that, the details on the meeting and hosting the meeting would be that much like right now it'd be on Zoom. And, we only have 2 people in our audience here tonight. So everybody who's tuning in is clearly utilizing the Zoom feature. So it would be basically the same.
I'm sure there's a mechanism. I just want to make sure we figure out what that mechanism is.
Yeah, definitely. So I know in John and my conversation about this, we had floated or wanted to float to you guys the idea of doing it either the next meeting, which would be my preference. So we're out for April, so the third
28th.
The third Thursday would be over April vacation. So we're onto an off cycle on the 28th, which is the 4th Thursday. So I put that out there as a possibility, or then the week after, which would be again a regularly scheduled meeting on the 5th. If anybody has the 5th.
Yeah, Lisa and I were talking about the scheduling of this and AP exams are in here on the 5th.
Yep.
So she thought it might be better if we weren't here.
Yep. Yeah, yes, and I had spoken with the librarian today. We're not going to be here
Oh,
on the
so we
5th
wouldn't be here
regardless.
anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
we probably have to just pull back to Zoom for that meeting.
Oh, got it.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
If they're, obviously check with them.
Yeah, unless you have.
Does the 28th work as a backup for people?
Yeah, I just, I can do either. So.
David, 5th?
Oh, absolutely.
And the 20th backup. Sarah, you're good with that too?
We're talking about April 28th.
Or May 5th. Yeah, so May 5th is the preference by the other committee members right now, and then the 28th as a backup if for whatever reason the 5th wouldn't work for Metco Inc.
Okay, and it will be Zoom accessible, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's not a problem.
All right, okay, great. So John, you and I will work offline, and you know, Emily will probably need a little bit of help from you. And then, yeah, we will work towards that parent representative piece. And I guess the 5th is probably better, gives us a little bit more time to really iron out that so we can present something solid at that meeting. Okay, great. Thank you, Emily and John. Okay, so subcommittee liaison updates. So we've got general subcommittee updates first. I'll kick it off. Emily and I, with Dr. Bucky, had a policy meeting last week. We're working on cleaning up and going back to a few questions that we had in the I policies. You know, just kind of ironing out some details. Didn't have anything to move forward quite yet tonight, but in coming meetings probably will with a few different things. So I know everyone will be awaiting policy changes anxiously. Very exciting. Anybody else? I know budget, we spent a lot of time on facilities. Yep. SAC, I met at the high school today, still continuing to work on the handbook. That work, looking at, and this will, you know, for Megan, myself, and David, the attendance policy. We spent quite a bit of time talking about that. So kind of bringing, we voted some big changes a few years back, and then the COVID struck, and so it's been on pause at that point. So sort of looking into next year, what makes sense, making sure that it's really any of the pieces that weren't working well previously. There was a lot that actually was working quite well, get ironed out or communicated more effectively, to be a big piece to it. So, yeah.
I think the village SAC today, the handbooks came up there as well.
Okay. So that will make Lisa happy too. All the references to our policy book and everything, making sure that that's all up to date, and that it's much more particularly at the high school level, that it's much more accessible and less, you know, with a lot of hot links being added in, and so that you're not just kind of like mind numbing and scrolling through it. So it'll be great once it gets done. Sarah, did you have anything else that you needed to add? Anything?
The facilities properties discussion is a pretty big deal. Okay.
It's got its own mark. So before we moved on to that, I just didn't know that I didn't want to leave you out with any other updates. So
no, we're good.
All right. So with that, we can move on to the properties discussion.
So at the last facilities meeting, we looked at all of our properties. Although the list looks long, many of our properties on there actually attached to a main campus of one of our schools. For instance, you may see Smith Street. That's actually the back section of the high school. So a lot of these properties are in use, even though it looks like we own a surplus. What we did talk about was the Beacon Street property. And it was determined at that meeting that we do not, as far as the schools are concerned, find that to be a piece of property that would be buildable for a school. That does not mean it is not buildable. It just doesn't. We looked at this extensively during the feasibility study for the Brown School, and it was deemed at that point not be an appropriate building site for a school. So where it is not advisable to hold on to property that we do not see there being a need in the future for, I would say that this is really low hanging fruit, in that it was the unanimous recommendation of the facilities committee to the school committee that we utilize Article 33 to transfer the care and custody of the Beacon Street property back to the town.
So Article 33, that one is.
I said the wrong article.
Oh, okay.
The placeholder article we have to transfer property, that we utilize that for the transfer of Beacon Street.
I don't believe we have a placeholder one on that.
I thought we did. I thought it was 33. I could be wrong. Michelle, can you speak to this?
33, I think, is the Blakemore article, citizens article, if I'm not mistaken.
I had asked to put it
Right.
on and we thought it was premature.
Right.
Premature, so
Yep.
we did not.
So we didn't put a placeholder in.
Yeah,
But,
unfortunately.
yeah,
So, we can definitely follow up on that. Definitely should follow up on that and make sure. But I'm almost positive that we did not put that through.
I'm looking at it now. I don't see
Okay.
anything there. On the warrant.
So meeting, unless I completely misunderstood, I thought, Michelle, that we were that's what we were talking about, which of these properties, if any, this year we felt we were comfortable saying we were not using. Michelle, correct me if that and Emily, you were there, if that discussion was not what happened.
No, that discussion is what happened. We had an outside party requesting that we not commit to a long-term use of a specific property because of a citizen petition article that was on the town warrant. But we did not have a town placeholder, and I actually double-checked with the interim town administrator, and he said there is not a vehicle this year to take action at town meeting after our subcommittee meeting. As a follow-up.
Yeah, and one of the things, when David brought it up originally, I'm gonna just kind of reiterate myself, is that at least my understanding of the MOU we put together was to look at our properties across the town as a collective group and come up with a plan in conjunction, with conversations with the town and the full committee on how we want to best utilize those and look at them kind of collectively rather than do this piecemeal thing. So I would still like to see, those conversations happen in that plan put together before we start picking things off.
I think what happened, that is what our plan is to do. And that's when Sarah emailed the select board to get that going. And that's when this list was created.
Yeah.
But we did get this email from, I forget who sent it.
Yeah, it's,
From
The Fair Housing
Housing, asking about that specific property. So that's why we talked about it at our facilities meeting. And they were I think they just don't want us to re-up the lease. So next year, after we've talked about everything, we can put and decide that that's the property we want to give back. We can do that next year. And so I don't think it's an issue right now, except for the insurance, right? That was what you were concerned about, right, Michelle?
Yes, that was one of my initial concerns, and it still does not seem to be resolved as far as I know.
well, so Article 33 is a citizens article from Bikemore. And as all of you probably remember, last year, sometime right around this time, we voted for an MOU with Bikemore. We'd worked extensively with town and town council on allowing them to use the Green Street, the Beacon Street property. When they went back and looked sort of and dug further with their lawyers and their insurance, they cannot take on the liability for that property. Town has said they can't take on the liability for that property, and we had made it clear up front that we can't take on the liability for that property. So we're back in communication with them. I had recommended to them when they reached out to us shortly before the warrant closed and sort of said, can we figure this out, or should we put this article on? I had said, it was, right smack dab in the middle of all the budget stuff and the previous town administrator leaving. And so I said, I would recommend that they put this article on because it can always be indefinitely postponed if we can figure this out before town meeting. But that, once the warrant's closed, obviously the warrant's closed. So that's where this fair housing letter, that's what article that they're referring to about the Green Street or the Beacon Street property and the Bikemore piece. So we are still working with Bikemore. I don't know anybody who doesn't want that to happen. I'm just unsure of how we move forward at this point. So it's, I think this was what was in the back of my head with the Beacon Street property, even when David brought it up of, would it streamline that process if we were able to turn it back over to the town this year? Because it does seem like the piece where we own it, but the town carries all the reliability anyways, like it's just so, fuzzy at this point. But everything that we've just discussed, I don't think we have any ability to, unfortunately, to turn Beacon Street over, unfortunately, in my opinion, this year. And so it's going to have to sort of sit with us and wait. And to Megan's point, absolutely, because this is what we said when David had brought it up. I think we were all basically in agreement that it would be great to sort of turn some of these over, but that we did really want to use that MOU for what it was enacted for and see, what are there trades to be made? Are there, what makes sense to turn over? What makes sense for us? And the fair housing piece, this letter that I know you guys looked at and that it was in our Dropbox, and we'll enter it in the correspondence as well, but basically stating that the town has this provision where school implementation kind of, the land has to kind of run through this fair housing committee, basically, and with any kind of permanent uses, which Bikemore is aware of it. They're fine with those parameters. But yeah, we just sort of find ourselves not uncertain as to how to move forward on that. So, I guess the silver lining is that since we can't turn Beacon Street over this year, it gives gives the select board the time to pick their representatives and to have this bigger discussion, which is great. So yeah, any questions, any further comments on that? Sarah, do you have anything else that you wanted to add from the property discussion?
No, basically that was the only one as a committee that we, identified, but we're definitely want to see through the MOU with Fidelity. We just need to identify who we're supposed to be speaking to.
Absolutely. Yep. And I do wonder, given this letter, and there's been a lot of meetings with, I believe it's with the Fair Housing Committee about the coffin site use. I do wonder if it would be worthwhile to have this group come and present to us at some point, just sort of how this impacts, or, I'm not sure, maybe it would make more sense to work with facilities on this. We can kind of sort that out offline, but for them to come and fill us in, because when we got this letter, it was certainly news to me that there was sort of this oversight on the properties that we own and manage. So I'm just a little confused on it. So.
I read it, not that they actually have any legal oversight, but that they have prioritized certain properties we have in their plan. And so that if we give up that care and custody, they, for lack of a more professional term, want dibs.
We don't have the right to do that. We can turn it over to the town.
Right, it's turns over to the town. Yeah. So, all right. So I'll work and see if we can't get them in at some, a little bit later meeting in the year, just to sort of, probably after town meeting at that point, but just kind of better understand that, particularly for the work moving forward with the properties and the MOE that we've got. All right. Any new business? Sarah?
I wanted to start the dialogue about conducting a staff survey in a true 360 survey. I know one of John's goals this year is a leadership goal, and I think to truly be effective in assessing that goal, that we really need this data. As we look at that, would encourage that the union facilitates this and then just gives us back the data from it. But I think that information would be really helpful to have a full staff survey.
What is can you just fill me in like what the staff survey would be looking at? Just kind of climate and culture?
Climate, culture, I think we would want to take the direction from the union of things that they think are pertinent to ask for. And just kind of request that they facilitate that for us.
John, is that something you could have a conversation with the union about?
Sure, we meet quickly, so I'm happy to.
Great. And I do think, I'll piggyback on this, and I wish I'd remembered to say it earlier. I know the town went forward with a salary survey and looking at salaries and making sure that they're comparable. And I do think that would be, and if you mentioned it in at least one area that when we were talking tonight, I do think that would be something that would be really worthwhile as we, again, look to really solidify every aspect of our budget.
It's part of planning process.
Wonderful. Great. All right. Anybody else? Okay. As I mentioned, we've got this fair housing letter that was in everybody's Dropbox. We'll put that into correspondence. Anything else for correspondence? All right. So I will adjourn us at 9:25. Thank you, everyone.